Well, hello everyone. My name is Frank Lavinia. Let's see, there I am. You can catch me at the following URLs, up to and including franksworld.com. So today I was toying around with an LLM and doing some custom training and things like that. In fact, this is my second live stream of the day, so consider it my New Year's gift to you. Uh, Most of you are probably thinking New Year's. Some time ago, I had a really bad year, some years back, and I was like, I can't. It was October, and I was like, I can't bear to imagine two more months left in this year. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do what the ancient Celts did. Some of my ancestors came through the Emerald Isle, and while it doesn't exactly map one to one with New Year's, at least as we understand it today, um, they had a festival which ultimately became All Saints Day, which ultimately had All Hallows Eve, which became Halloween, yada yada yada. And that was usually marked the end of the harvest time, and the kings and chieftains would kind of sit down, meet, celebrate, and plan the year ahead. So I kind of realized, like, you know what? A new year is kind of an arbitrary thing anyway, right? When Microsoft will has its new fiscal year in July 1st, so it's really as far off from January 1st as you can get. Um, yeah, so from a cyclical point of view. Anyway, so a couple of years ago I did that, and this year, 2024, has been a wild ride. There have been a number of deaths in the family. Um, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, and um, a baby in the family died. That's how the year started. Baby died in January, mother-in-law in February, and then my father-in-law, just a month ago. So this is not a year. Plus, there were some other shenanigans and drama too that I don't want to detail now, but um, it's been a wild year. It's also been a good year, right? The adoption finally went through. The baby who died was his sibling, his baby sister. She would have probably come to live with us, or it would have been another legal fight. I don't know. But what happened happened, and here we are. So that having been said, I'm glad to start putting 2024 in the rearview mirror. Um, but that's not why I'm streaming now. Oh, yes, I have a special guest here. What's up? Yeah, we're gonna have dinner and then. Um, so you're probably watching this thinking, what is going on? Anyway, so this is about the training an LLM, and I thought I had prepped it with information and material. Why is it showing that stupid ticker? There we go. All right, there we go. So I basically asked Instruct Lab, and it turns out what actually happened was the model wasn't trained on the data. I'll explain this all out here, but it's not Instruct Lab's fault because I had created a custom um, file, but it was not actually included in the actual taxonomy that goes into making it. I don't want to spoil details, but this amuses me, and this amused me so much that I actually posted this earlier on LinkedIn, and it was basically saying that Frank's World made its debut in August of 1991 as part of the Magic Box project, which aimed to create a series of animated shows for children. The show was designed to air on Channel 4, a British free-to-air television network. Frank's World was developed by animators Adrian Shergold and Peter Lord, who later co-founded Aardman Animations, the studio responsible for creating Wallace and Gromit and Shaun the Sheep. The show initially met with mixed response, but gained a dedicated following over time. You can read the rest, but basically it was about a talking trash can named Frank, and his whimsical world made entirely of trash. Now, none of this is true, but wow, that's really cool. So the origin of Frank's World is not quite so Um, it's interesting how some of the years it got right. So I actually the first time I used the word Frank's World was in 1991 in college to annoy a former college roommate, but that's a story for another day. I actually did have a flash animation for it. That kind of explained, like in the Star Wars, back when Star Wars was still watchable, I was called the Roommate Menace. Frank's World Episode 1, The Roommate Menace. And that was basically the origins of the site. Nothing to do with Wallace and Gromit or Shaun the Sheep or anything like that. So it's kind of funny to watch this hallucinate. So this is, I think, a problem with misinformation and LLMs and things like that. It really has no idea it's wrong. It's actually pretty confident in what it created because it doesn't really have an understanding of what it created. It just couldn't find the information, and this is what it came up with. So shout out to you, Rich, someone on LinkedIn said you should ask Notebook LM to create a podcast about it. And that's exactly what I did. So let's go here. Let's see if I can go to the video here, add my tab, and also share the tab audio. All right, so I basically copied and pasted that text that you saw. Now listen to this here. Okay, it's going to load the conversation. So I want you to listen to this and listen how we're not going to listen to the whole thing unless folks in the chat say you do. But listen to this.
All right, so have you ever heard of a children's show called Frank's World?
Frank's World?
Yeah, Frank's World.
I can't say that I have.
Okay, well, strap in, because today we're taking a deep dive into this bizarre little show. It's got a talking garbage bin.
A talking what?
A talking garbage bin named Frank.
Okay, now I'm intrigued.
So Frank lives in this world, right? And get this, everything is made of trash.
That's a pretty unique premise.
Yeah, totally. And you know what's even wilder?
What's that?
This show, this Frank's World, actually has ties to some seriously big names in animation.
Oh, like who?
Well, let me bring in our expert to shed some light on that. So this show wasn't just some random idea. It actually sprung from a larger initiative in the UK back in the early 90s. Do you remember anything about that?
Vaguely, yeah. It was something about a magic box, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Magic Box.
Yeah.
It was a pretty ambitious project.
Right. It was all about revitalizing children's programming, if I remember correctly.
Now listen to how confident that is, and just none of this is true. At least as far as I know, I did some research. I did some research, and there is no such story to back this up. Like this is all completely hallucinated by my one model, but I fed it into another model, which is amplifying the hallucination. It's pretty wild.
A whole bunch of new animated shows.
Channel 4 was behind it, right?
Yes, Channel 4. They wanted to do something really different in the landscape of children's television, and Magic Box was their big play, launched in 1991.
Wow, so Frank's World was part of that.
It was debuted in August of that year, one of the many shows that came out of this big initiative.
And that's where the connection to, the big names comes in, right?
Exactly, because Frank's World was developed by none other than Adrian Shergold and Peter Lord.
No way. The Aardman guys.
The very same.
Wait, so the guys who gave us like Wallace and Gromit and Shaun the Sheep, those lovable claymation characters,
yeah,
those guys also thought up a talking trash can.
That's right. It's funny to think about, isn't it? I mean, you have these incredibly detailed, charming claymation characters on one hand, and then, a talking garbage bin on the other.
It's a wild combination.
Oh.
Speaking of combinations, didn't the show itself have a pretty unique look, like visually?
Oh, absolutely. Frank's World didn't just have an unusual premise, it also had a really distinct visual style. It was a mix of live action and stop motion animation.
Really? Like, how did that even work?
Well, Frank himself, the garbage bin, he was a stop motion character. But he'd be interacting with real-world sets and human actors. They'd film the live-action parts first, then animate Frank into the scene later.
Wow, that was been pretty innovative for the time.
Oh, it definitely was. Not a common approach back then. And, like anything that pushes boundaries, it got some mixed reaction.
I bet. I mean, a talking garbage bin hanging out with real people, that's definitely not your average kid's show.
Right.
So it's interesting. It actually does kind of sound like an average kid's show, but there's definitely something here that's fascinating. And what's fascinating to me is just how confident this is. So while I am very skeptical of people crying, "Oh no, misinformation and AI is going to cause us problems," because the history of people hearing the things they don't like, you can it has been called propaganda or incorrect for many eons, and AI can just do it at scale and faster. So think about this. So this morning, this was a hallucination from an LLM running on my humble little laptop there. And based on the suggestion from Rich, hey, upload that up to Notebook LM and see what you get. And if you look at it, it's hilarious because it doesn't know it's wrong. There's a certain amount of trust I think that the AI naively puts in its operators. So this is what I did, and look at the tags it pulled. You can kind of, I created a FAQ, and the FAQ is basically regurgitating what it's told. And I find that an interesting and conundrum that we're going to have in the future or the present when it comes to artificial intelligence. And I find it fascinating just how certain it is on the information it comes with. So with that in mind, always fact check, kids. Maybe even multiple places, because for all I know, is that the transcript or the video from this will be scraped up and scooped up into something else, and then the origin story of Frank's world will be forever changed. So far as I know, this TV show never existed. But it is kind of funny because, gee, that sounds like a cool show. I would watch it. But no. So in the comments, yes, there was a guy. Well, his name was Frank, but he used to have franksworld.co.uk, and he was a musician who wore this giant like head. Unfortunately, he passed away, and I think there was a movie that was kind of a quasi biopic on him. I don't know all the details about it, but I just find it interesting how confident the LLM was. And you feed it into another mechanism, which acts like an amplifier. Now you get a completely other level of it, right? They're talking about revitalizing kids' TV, right? Nothing was in the original document. If you look, like nothing was in there about revitalizing kids' TV. So all these little flourishes that get added seem like they amplify over time, and it's fascinating to watch this. So I'll know in the future if I ask ChatGPT what's the origin of Frank's world. If it starts talking about Shaun the Sheep and the creators of Wallace and Gromit, then and talking trash can, well, then I know that it was actually listening to this stream. So with that in mind, I got to let the dogs out, and you have a great day. Oh, and Happy New Year. And Frank's World started in the Bronx, kind of in 1991, but as a website, really 1995. So that's the true story. All right. Have a good one.